Hey, you! Are you a curious person and a music lover just like me? Well, if the answer is yes, this is your podcast. Hi, I'm Ramon Mañas, I'm the travel sax creator, and welcome to Blowing in the Wind, the place to get inspired throughout music and innovation. Hello everyone and welcome to the episode number 14 of the Blowing in the Wind podcast. Today I have the honor of interviewing Lorenzo Ferrero. He's an amazing sax player and a composer. He has a Latin Jazz Grammy award, and I've been talking with him for a while, and we've been going in depth in very interesting topics that I would like to share with you guys. So I hope you like it, and let's start. Tense moment, I cannot say anything. We need to keep listening to the music. And still not saying anything, just listening to this beautiful song called La Flor de la Canela from an album called Tradiciones. And this nice saxophone that's being played, I'm not sure if it's you or Anibal.
That's me.
That's you. That's good. Great. It's beautiful. So, Lorenzo, thank you so much for being here in our podcast, Blowing the Wind. I was really looking forward to interviewing you. So again, thank you so much for spending the time with us. And as I was introducing this beautiful song that actually won, right? You won a Latin Grammy with this arrangement of La Flor de la Canela, which is one of the most known songs in Peru. Is that am I right?
Absolutely. It's like a second national.
That's amazing. So I would like to start by understanding, right, your origins and how can you get to winning a Latin Grammy. And not just this, you were also nominated with a Grammy, right, for the whole album. That's also true, right?
Yes.
Okay, how do you get there? I mean, what's the path? What's the story behind Lorenzo Ferrero?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Ramon, for having me here. It's a pleasure to tell you a little bit about my story and a little bit about my background. So that specific project, the Afro-Peruvian Jazz Orchestra, came up because, I'm from Peru originally. I studied, I went to Berkeley when I was 18. I left back home because there were not many opportunities to study music. Now there's more, but back then it was very limited. And not only that, but the concept of being a musician was not as accepted by society as much, not respected as much. At that time, my father wanted me to study something else, more serious first,
Okay.
and then but I insisted that I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to go straight to music because I told him it would be a waste of time to study anything else.
Wow.
Uh,
Okay.
but after maybe a year and a half of back and forth and fight, he actually made me go to university back home, and I did study communications for 1 year.
Okay.
In the meantime, I was applying to Berkeley. So once they accepted me, they gave me some scholarship,
Oh wow.
and that was, my dad got convinced, and he loved music so much. I mean, he loved classical music mainly, so his love for music also like helped.
Okay.
But he was a lawyer, so he was a lawyer, so very strict, very academic.
Mm-hmm.
So and I wanted to do jazz mainly, so it was like very not very known for him. I was scared. But anyway, I left. I went to study music. I was, of course, super happy. I mean, to go to Berklee College of Music and immerse myself in this, international world of
Yeah.
knowing musicians from over the world and studying with some of the best people. And then after that, I studied there for 4 years. I met my wife there. After that, I actually went to Vienna for a little bit for some touring. But the main things at Berkeley, I studied composition, like jazz composition, writing for big band performance. I try to study as many things as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people know me as a saxophone player. But actually, I'm almost, I want to say mainly, but it's really half-half. My musical life is playing and then writing, arranging, and producing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, after that, I went to Vienna for a little bit for some touring, and then I got convinced that I needed to come to Los Angeles, California, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of, this is where the music industry
Indeed.
is. Well, it might change, but for now, it's still here.
Yeah.
I came here. There were so many opportunities. So many of my friends from Berkeley were moving here, so at that time in Vienna, there was not a lot to do. So I decided to move to LA, and I've been here almost 9 years now. And this project, to answer more specifically your question about the Afro-Peruvian Jazz Orchestra with Anibal, actually Anibal, I met him back in Peru many, many years ago, before going to Berkeley, before, like when we were in high school. We were not in high school together, but we went to the National Symphonic Youth Orchestra together, and we met there playing clarinet, classical clarinet. And then when he moved to LA way before me. He studied here and everything. So when I moved to the city, we instantly reconnected, and we decided we said we need to do something together. I don't know what, but we need to do some sort of project.
Nice.
So a lot of experimentation came up, and we both love our Peruvian roots and rhythms and stuff like that. So we had a few commissions to write a few big band charts for Peruvian schools, and I did La Flor de la Canela, he did Ritmo, Color y Sabor, and the project kind of started accidentally, and that led to building an album and all of that, which is one of the main things here that I've been doing.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I want to hear a bit more of this great song that was fully composed from you. I mean, you composed this arrangement yourself?
Yes, arrangement. I wrote all the arrangements. So
Nice.
La Flor de Canela is a very well-known song by Raúl Granda, which it's a very important Peruvian vals criollo composer, and the song just became extremely known everywhere. But it's when I researched, because this song was actually commissioned to me into this, like, can you write an arrangement of this song for this big band? So I've never actually done anything Peruvian for big band at that time, like swing and traditional big band. So that meant I needed cajon, and I needed all these Peruvian instruments, which came back into my world because I grew up with those, but I hadn't applied them to my music, and I just fell in love with the sound of the Peruvian rhythms and elements combined with this sophisticated kind of fat sound from the big band, and in Peruvian music that it has no precedent. Like, it really doesn't, it's never been done, like to have a big band with Afro-Peruvian and this rhythm. So in that sense, it was a little bit fresh, because it's a sound that La Flor de la Canela, for example, such a known song, but an arrangement like that had never been done before. It's usually more of like Creole arrangements or this and that, but a big band, that was the first one. So I was very happy to kind of introduce that to the world with an elegance, right?
That's great. I think if we can hear a bit more of this great song. I think that what really gave you right the possibility to win this Latin Grammy award, right, is that when we talk about Afro, well, let's say Afro or Latin jazz, right? We normally tend to think a bit more of bossa nova, right, or Cuban sounds, right, like salsa, merengue, bachata, and mixing this with jazz. But I was not that familiar with Peruvian, right, jazz. It's really interesting.
Absolutely. That's actually a whole theme for me, even when we did some interviews and things like that, because like you say, Latin jazz, it's people associate that with, Cuban or Brazilian, pretty much the dominant, it's like some sort of Cuban element, because that's where jazz landed the most, in Cuban, in Brazil, or samba, bossa nova. You don't imagine festejo or landó, which are these Peruvian rhythms. So I think that was a very probably a very important thing in us winning that Latin, well, at least being nominated, sorry for winning the arrangement, but also being nominated as a Latin jazz album, because even the other albums we were nominated with used, the Cuban elements or Brazilian elements. This was the first thing, like another South American elements and rhythms were being used. So for us, it's important as well. I mean, for me, it's like to introduce a new sound to the Latin jazz community, that it's a little different and has other, we're so many countries, and there's so many rhythms that are beautiful and that maybe haven't been exploited yet, and it's also like a little bit of my responsibility as a Peruvian doing what I'm doing to use my elements. Even a simple fact like the cajon, it's Peruvian, and a lot of people don't know that. Some people think because it's really popular in Spain with Paco de Lucia when he brought it, but flamenco didn't originally use cajon, right? So that's also a very important thing, because it makes that project like an ambassador project as well. It's like, this is our some of our rhythms, but also the jazz part is really important, because we're not playing traditional Peruvian music. We're blending it with jazz, and jazz for me has this way of making everything like approachable, because if it would be too Peruvian, then a non-Peruvian probably won't want to listen to it, right?
Exactly.
That's the reality. But the jazz just makes it look, oh, what's that? Like, it's just I don't know, it has this friendly sound to it, or at least elegant, sophisticated sound to it that kind of like made me fall in love with it,
Indeed. Well, congratulations again. I think it's a great achievement, and it's not easy. I want to know a bit more about Lorenzo when he was a kid, right? Did you, because I can relate to music since I was almost 4 years old when I started playing piano, and my parents were asking me, Ramon, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? What do you want to work? And I was like saying, I want to be a professional piano player. And this happened for a while. I mean, many years I was saying, I'm going to be a pianist. Then I switched but the connection with music, the strong connection has been always with me. How about you? I mean, what's the relationship that you have with music?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I was mentioning, my dad, who unfortunately passed away last year, but
sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, but he was like an obsessive classical music lover.
Okay.
But like obsessively, like I don't even know where that came from, because his dad, my grandfather, I didn't meet my grandfather, but nobody like, this didn't. I mean, I think there is actually a composer like 4 generations ago or 5 generations ago on my family. But other than that, there's like really, he's the only one. And he just, he played classical music since before I was born. So I've been listening to, Strauss, Rachmaninoff, Beethoven,
Yeah.
like all of these pieces, that for me, I took for granted, honestly, because you're like, it's almost not normal because you're a 5-year-old kid listening to Wagner operas instead of like anything else. He would just put that super loud on the speakers on a Sunday morning,
Okay.
and that's kind of a lot of my childhood has like that sort of soundtrack, like
Okay.
Alsos Praza Zarathustra or the Wagner, the Ring Cycle. Like a lot of this is just it's I didn't realize it back then because for me that was the normal. But then when I met more people that they didn't have, they probably don't know those pieces or they haven't listened to that as much. It's like, wow, my dad was really obsessive with this. He would actually put the same CD or it was at that time like this thing where you could put 5 CDs and he would same 5 CDs for like a month and then he would switch here and there. So it was like a lot of like the same, which I think really contributed to me, to my ears. If you're listening to all of these sonatas and all of these symphonies and pieces so much and so often, it actually really created a big passion. I'm actually really passionate about classical music. The only reason I'm not a classical musician is because I'm obsessed with improvisation and jazz and all of that. I have more fun with it, But so that's kind of my background is very classical, big, not as a student of classical music, but as a student of like just listening every single day of my life to classical music. I've heard more classical music than any other style ever because, at that time is what my dad was putting every day. So it's hard to compete, with that. But yeah, that started my love for music. And then I started playing classical and jazz was unknown, but as I said, there was a point where I met improvisation and that like just, completely turned my head around, to the fact that you could learn these musical elements and spontaneously improvise and create music and melodies and harmony. So that's like where I started. And of course, then the other side of jazz and modern music, the groove side, I started really loving the fact that you can get all these groove elements and just all these complexities. So my musical background has been very, very broad, but in my house, I never listened to anything else other than classical music, like from my dad. It was only that. The rest I had to discover by myself,
Okay, amazing. And when did you decide that the saxophone was the instrument? Or maybe you play other instruments. What's your background on that?
Yeah. I started with the clarinet, and even before that, I was trying out a few like mandolin. Like before, when I in my high school, or high school actually, middle school, just I really wanted to play something. I didn't know what. Then a clarinet was like my main first instrument when I was 12, and I started really playing it. I played it really well. I still play it. I started playing classical, and then I started like learning jazz. I had a friend in high school that was in this thing called Jazz Peru, and I was like, "What is that?" This big band. And then I started playing with the clarinet. And of course, you don't get a clarinet too often in these big band settings, right? More traditional jazz. And the guy just told me, the director told me, we need a tenor sax. Don't you want to play tenor sax? First, I thought maybe soprano because it looked similar to the clarinet. He said tenor sax, and then I remember we went to one of the music stores there. It was like a Yamaha store, and I tried this student model Yamaha tenor sax, and it was the first time I ever played a saxophone in my life was in that store. And I was surprisingly I could play a little bit because of the clarinet, of course, with a very terrible thin sound, but I could get a sound of it. I was playing. I remember perfectly, like the first time that I ever touched a saxophone was in that store. And then from there on, I think I'm pretty sure we bought it the same day. Took it home, and with my friend, he played trumpet. He was like, "Okay, now we have to play Now's the Time by Charlie Parker because now you play sax. Now you have a saxophone." So we try to play it, and I started getting obsessed with the saxophone, and I started listening. Now my world changed, with Dexter Gordon, Ben Webster, Sonny Rollins, Coltrane. Started with those greats, and then I went all in and got obsessed with that jazz sound and the saxophone. But that was pretty much how I played the saxophone, almost by not accident, but it's like, well, we need a we need you to play tenor sax.
And when you compose, because you are a saxophonist, but you're also a composer, what are the instruments that you normally use to compose? You do everything with a saxophone, or what's?
No, I actually play a lot of piano.
Okay.
I of course when I was a kid I took some lessons, and then later at Berkeley, one of my big obsessions in music is actually harmony.
Yeah.
Like I said, a lot of people know me, but as a saxophone player, and even the stuff I do on Instagram and my online academy, a lot of it is about melody and improvising and developing your musical language. But a lot of my obsession with music really started with harmony, right? Listening to a song and the chords, how the chords make you feel different ways. So that obsession couldn't be fulfilled with a saxophone.
Yeah.
I needed to play. I wanted to understand the vertical aspect of music. So since I started studying, I would sit down on the piano and try to figure out chords, and then of course learning all the theory and composition. The piano has been my main instrument in the composing side. I don't actually use the saxophone to write music. Maybe if I want to get a melody or something, but I'm very harmony oriented in that sense. So piano is my main company for that.
Interesting. Yeah. I totally relate to that. Because in my case, it was a bit different because I started playing piano when I was very little, and I was transitioning also from classical to a bit more modern piano. I cannot say I can play jazz because it's a bit more complex, and I'm not at that level. But the transition was very similar, right? From classical to a bit more modern pop, and also discovering the magic of harmony, right? Understanding the relationship with the chords, and it suddenly opens a completely new world where you can understand, what you were talking about, the feelings, right? You hear a chord, minor 7 chord, and you say, "Oh wow! I mean, what's this?" Right? And then you do a sus 4 or whatever, right? And it's just a world that I completely felt in love to. Yeah, totally relate to that. Yeah. I always like to ask people that are professional musicians like you, that you had it like very, very clear that you wanted to be as a professional musician, right? A saxophone sax player and even a composer. But did you had back then a plan B? I mean, or not? Just like
That's a good question. Honestly, I didn't.
Okay.
I think that the fact that the resistance from my dad, initial resistance, because after that he supported me amazingly throughout all my career, but there was this initial resistance of like, you need to study something else, and the fact that he put me on because like I had another friend that he wanted to study music, but he was like more like this and that. And then he did like a whole sabbatical, before going, and it was like way more laid back. His prayers were more laid back. But mine was like, oh no way, like you either, like I remember at that time in my high school there was like this international baccalaureate program, and it was either finishing that or you could, or my dad was like, either you do that extra year or you go to university here until we figure out. I was like, I really want to get out of my high school. Studied university because it was a very small bubble. So if anything, that little year and a half in my university back home was really great because I met some awesome people. But during that time studying, and it was like a year of like general studies, I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to study any of that stuff. So at that point, I wanted to do is spend as much time playing music and getting lessons. And I grabbed the best like pianist back then in Peru and the best saxophone player, and they were both teaching me, one harmony and arranging and the other one saxophone, and anything else he could teach me.
Nice.
While I would go through university, I gotta say honestly, kind of me in a mediocre way, like just getting along, not like great grades, just enough so that my dad would be okay with it, and of course he wasn't that okay with it, but I was like, I just wanted the music. If I spend all this time doing this stuff, I don't care for it. So at that time, it was all my process of applying to Berkeley. So when they accepted me, and I think doing something that I didn't want to do for like that year helped me really want to do it more.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just doing a sabbatical or something like that, so that really pushed me. So I had no plan B at that point. It's like I want to be a musician or nothing else. Like I told my dad, this is like I can't do anything else. I'm sorry. Like I know you want me to study something else, but I actually told him, if you make me study something else, I'm gonna be mediocre on whatever you make me study. I'm gonna be super mediocre, and I'm gonna do music anyway. I'm gonna find my way to the music, and I'm probably gonna do it badly because I wanna.
Have the
I'm
time.
just gonna bad at both.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
that sort of helped my argument, because
Yeah.
he wanted me to excel on whatever. So that helped. So
That's
that's
great.
kind of like a little story.
That's great. That's great. And I wanted to know about the process of deciding. Okay, I'm living in Peru. I know more or less. I know what's gonna be the answer, but I want to be a musician. So let's see where can I study with the best, right? And that's Berkeley, like in Boston, right? It's one or the best music school or music university to actually teach jazz studies. They're also doing like classical studies too, but jazz especially is one of the best universities in the world, right, to study. Was that the option to go to Boston, or it was how did the process went on?
Yeah, I think, I've always heard of Berkeley. I looked for I remember looking at the website, looking at I was really happy with the majors they were offering, like jazz composition, arranging, this and that. I thought it was gonna be, I honestly didn't apply to anything else. And that I really didn't know anything about schools. And if you really think about back then, I mean, even though I'm like relatively young, this was still like 2008. So
How old are you,
there
by
was
the way?
I'm 33.
33. Okay.
But I
Just
left at 18, and back then
yeah.
was 2008. There wasn't a lot of resources on. I mean, there was, but not like today. And that's also something that I wanted to take advantage of this time and mention a little bit, because back then I went to study. It was amazing. It was really great. I got a scholarship. I learned so much. But during the past 12 years, the online resources, life has changed so much, that there are so many ways to learn. Like, for example, what I do on Instagram, my academy, the courses I teach, nobody was doing that back then. Now there's a lot of people doing it, and a lot of great people doing it. So it's just a pointer, because music schools today, they can be very expensive.
Yeah.
And some people just think, oh, I have to go to school. Yeah, you do. But there's a point where, music universities, they're charging so much. You go to school, and a lot of the times, to be honest, they don't really teach you how it is to be a musician or how it is to be in the real life. LA has been a very good teacher and a completely different university for me, because yes, I had all this knowledge from Berkeley, but here I learned experience and what is, sometimes you can finish studying and you feel you're great, and you go, in my case, to another city, and you learn from zero how it really is to be in the industry and be working and earning money with this. It's a whole different game, and there's all these other resources that I had to study, how to do, like, for example, as a musician, I think learning marketing, learning how to sell yourself, learning social media. Nowadays, there's a whole different spectrum of things you need to learn that I don't think universities are teaching it. Like, they're really behind. If you want to go learn music, it's great, but it's not, nowadays you can even learn all of this in many places. The thing right now is to whoever's listening to this, is to learn how not only how to be a professional, but really get the experience of how can you make a business out of it, because it's really a business. Even if you're a freelance musician, you're a small business. So it's really important to like, for me to mention that also, that I've probably learned more by coming to LA and working, and of course using what I knew and developing all of this content for the past 5 years. I've learned so much about different aspects of life that are as important, which is an important thing to mention.
Totally. I wanted to ask you about about your academy, Tone Alley, right? Tone Alley Academy. I would like to know more about it, and what do you teach and how do you teach it, so that our listeners maybe can check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started, when being in LA and working on everything and doing everything I was doing. I've been always obsessed with educational materials. That's probably the perfect time now to mention that aspect of my life, because coming from Peru, being from a place where it's limited music education, and again, it is getting a lot better now, but back then it was very limited. So for me, it was a very important thing. I had the opportunity to go to Berkeley, and I'm responsible to share a lot of this knowledge to people that are not available to do that, or are not able to do that, especially in Latin America or third world countries where it's a lot harder to get access to this knowledge. So for me, I've always built that educational aspect of me. I have, my father was an academic, my grandfather was an academic. So I also have that academic side in me where I love explaining, like, teaching harmony, teaching how to do it, teaching the hands-on structure. So when I came to I've been doing workshops and this and that. When I came to LA and started getting into social media, I wasn't really in social media. Social media wasn't even a big thing when I started studying yet. It was like, maybe Facebook. But then, Instagram and this and TikTok, all of this have exploded. And it's a way now where you can share these amazing things. I started following some great musicians that were sharing this educational content. And I need to do this. This is great, because it's not only I have to wait until I give another physical workshop back home. Exactly. I can start sharing and sharing and sharing, and people might learn a lot from this, and it will help me because I can grow as well, right? I was seeing a lot of this examples of great musicians that were growing their following, and they deserved it because they were sharing amazing material. But I was like, I want to do this. I want to reach a lot of people. So I started building educational materials, writing solos and sharing them, and finding ways, learning how to use these platforms and all of that. And then I started getting such a great response of people that were learning. And of course, I started the online lesson thing, and I started giving online lessons. So it all kind of grabbed together. And then after a little bit of success with that, I knew it was time to build something like an academy or something. Then let's fast forward on 2020. COVID was happening, and I decided to start doing this more like master classes and things like that. I did a mastery melody masterclass, which was a way where I could teach my hands-on method that I've been developing for the past 10 years of how you can grow your musical vocabulary, become a better improviser, a better writer. I did that. I recorded that masterclass, re-edited, and it became my first online course, which is called Mastery Course. And with that, I developed Tone Alley Academy. I said, okay, this needs to be even a separate entity from just me. It needs to be an academy. I started building little courses. It all started with my ebooks, really. My first educational material ever was my ebook, Mastering Bebop Vocabulary. It was just me. I started writing all these bebop solos, and it was really great because I was doing this for my students, but I was getting so much better at it. So right now, the whole concept of what I teach, it's a hands-on way that I got so much better because I started writing this and that. And I realized all these ways where you can get so much better without actually playing. But if you spend some time writing, developing, gathering your ideas and structuring things, then when you actually play, you can improve so much faster, without having to do 5-hour a day practice or stuff like that. So, and then one other note is a lot of my followers, a lot of my students, they were people that were not not musicians as a career. They had something else. That means they don't have a lot of time to practice. They don't have so a lot of the method I developed is for people that they really don't have a lot of time. So they need something super efficient, practice this, practice that, and you'll train not only your technique, you'll train your ears, you'll get chord fluency, you'll become a better improviser, just something that even with 20 minutes a day, you can push yourself, So that's how my whole academy is. And now we have premium programs where I do coaching program for saxophone players and musicians. I have a big band arranging private course, and then all these mini courses as well, and ebook packages. It has become a larger thing, which I'm happy about.
Nice. I want to ask you about the practice routines, the ones that you used to have, the ones that you have now, and the ones that you would recommend someone that has just like 20 minutes a day to practice, because I think it's a big yeah, it's a big thing, right? Practice routines, like to practice daily or as much as possible, really to become a better musician. Even though if you don't want to be a professional musician, but still to keep you motivated and to see that you're advancing and you're moving forward, right, step by step, you still need to practice. So that's something that's yeah, that's right. So what would be your practice routine? What was your first practice routine when you were, for example, applying to Berkeley?
I mean, at that time, because everything I wanted to do was music, I had more time.
Yeah.
Like all my time through Berkeley, I didn't have a routine. I would just run through like books and scales and the Joe Viola saxophone books, and we just try to get really good. I had a good time playing so much of like this diatonic scales and all of this basic saxophone technique that thankfully now I don't have to do that as much anymore because I did it for so long. So that was definitely a great thing. Now, another important mention here is not everybody wants to be the next best jazz saxophone player. Some goals are just to play for my family, to record. Nowadays, for example, I have a premium program for saxophone players, and some people might think, oh, it's just for really like the high school kids or college kids that really want to like play every day. Not really. It's for just anyone who wants to get like better at the saxophone in less time and have a coach. Basically, it's a program where I follow the student, build routines, because the routines have to change all the time. Yeah. There's a silly thing to have just one routine. They have to adapt and change, and you need to practice different things all the time. But also, if you have 20 minutes, 30 minutes, there's a lot of things you can do. Yeah. To get better. So one of the, if I can say something now that will help a lot of people, I call the net practice. It's called no extra time, which means there's so much you can do without your instrument. And this is like the number one thing that I see students like not grasping that concept, because they think they need if it's saxophone or piano, like they need an instrument to practice music. So the only time they do anything practice related is when it goes 20 minutes, and that's the worst thing you can do. Yeah, because then it's so frustrating. You're grabbing your instrument and you're trying to practice all of these things, and a lot of it is mind. It's the work that you can do is your mind. For example, one of the things that really my students get so much out of it is I told them rhythm practice. You don't need your instrument to get rhythmic fluency. Just listen to the music you love to listen, analyze rhythms and sing them back. Sing rhythms, groove with the rhythms, sing them, write some rhythms down. Nothing to do with the saxophone. You could be at work, hey, 5-minute break. I'm gonna like listen to something and write 4 rhythms. And then you start I started doing this so much without realizing, because I was taking walks, especially if you live in Europe where you get trains and you're walking and you're doing all of this, right? Just really listening to rhythms and improvising rhythms. Like I tell a lot of my students, can you put a metronome for 1 minute or just a groove that you can count in or something? And can you improvise only rhythms with your voice, with non-hesitation? No hesitation, meaning like you're really on the flow. Like it's not like you're stopping like this, right? And a lot of them can't. So if you can't do that, how do you think you're going to you're going to stutter in your improvisation? So a lot of this improvisation and becoming a fluent musician, the number one problem where I see my students failing is in the rhythmic vocabulary. They can practice chords. You spend your 20 minutes practicing chords and scales. If you don't have rhythms, you're never going to be able to improvise melodies or be an effective musician. So rhythm is the best thing you can do without your instrument. You can be singing rhythms all day long. You can be listening to any music you like, sing rhythms, analyze what you hear, Oh, that guitar part sounded really cool. The horn part sounded really cool. Forget about the notes. Can you sing that rhythm back, right? If it's funk, if you want to get better at swing rhythms, just sing until you can do that 1 minute or 2 minutes, you with a metronome. Can you really sing rhythmic, fluidly, any rhythms, And that's a good test. That's honestly, I did that so much that a lot of the times when I grab the saxophone, let's say I know a scale or I know certain chords, a lot of those rhythms show up, and I never played them before with that specific scale. It's just because rhythmic vocabulary, it's something that you need to internalize. You cannot practice with your instrument. You need to internalize. So you can practice scales, you can practice chords, but that's the number one thing that can make you a better musician, even with limited technique. Even if you just know a few chords, but if you start really practicing rhythms, you can play a C major chord in 25 different ways with just accommodating different rhythms with it. And it's amazing. In my mastering melody course, that's one of the main things I teach. Now, here's a chord right now. If you grab this basic rhythm or this other basic rhythm, all of a sudden there's a lot of melody going on by doing a simple element with all of these different rhythms. So I teach that a lot to my students because they can start producing phrases, sounding good. They can start writing, and they don't need all of this 12 key technique, which a lot of people teach. It's like you need to know this in 12 keys. Okay, your next assignment is this next phrase or next. So you don't need that. You can, can you be musical with a C major chord by using all of this rhythm? So I just wanted to mention that because that's one of the. And with, like, you do it with rhythm, you can practice with any other element. You can be, you don't need your saxophone. You could be, maybe for me, writing my own phrases. I spend some time and just write some phrases, write some solos. And then when you do get the chance to be with your saxophone, you'll be way more effective.
Yeah, definitely. Great tip. I always try to think mentally, right, on not just rhythms but also scales and chords and inversions, and try to say them loud, right? And then trying to say them loud basically helps me visualize it, and then it's super easy then to just translate it to our instrument, right? So that's also something that helps me a lot on my training, right? Trying to visualize something that you actually then want to play, and try to think how it sounds. It's also very helpful for me, at least.
100%.
I would like to ask you about the current projects that you are now doing. For those of you guys that are listening and do not know him, he has a huge YouTube channel and also a big Instagram account where I've been following him for a while, and he's sharing a lot of great content, and I would definitely recommend you guys to check him, right? It's at Lorenzo Ferrero.
Lorenzo Ferrero
music, right? That's right. So check him.
And the Academy one is Tone Alley Academy.
Tone Alley Academy, yeah. And both.
But if you go to my main one, you'll find the other one because it's there. Yeah, fantastic.
So, what are your the projects that you're working right now? What are your?
Yeah, so well, actually, I'm gonna start working on my first solo feature album in the next year and a half and 2 years, because I have to do that project in between all of these other things. I do a lot of recording work as a musician here in LA. I do a lot of film things. I have some partners and things like that where I actually work on some Spanish films.
Yeah, I've checked that. I would like to ask you about it too, about how do you get to write a score, right, or a music for a TV show or a film? I mean, what are the steps that you have been following to get there? It's really interesting.
Yeah, actually, following good composers that are already doing it. Because to be honest, when I came to LA, one of my main things was I want to do film, but then it's a really hard world. I discovered if I went to that route, I was not going to have much of a life, because I see a lot of people get so busy, and the deadlines and the music is like the last thing that the directors worry about. So it's like you get that last week or that last month. So, but I love, I started working with these composers as a recording, because they would send me their tracks. One of it was a Spanish composer, would send me one of his mock-ups, and then I would just play all the saxophones, clarinet, flute. I would just enhance it so much that it would be like a one-man recording session, that he would get the file back, and all of a sudden the mock-up was ready, really big. So I started doing that, and then I worked for there was this Spanish movie, Ola de Crímenes. I worked as
Yeah.
an arranger. So I haven't actually, Federico Jusit was an amazing composer and friend. He wrote the whole music, but he hired me as an arranger. So I did all the big band arrangement. It was a whole big band movie, which was really fun.
Wow.
I haven't actually done myself a feature film yet, but I started working with a really good friend of mine, a composer now here in LA, where we're doing some things together. But the main thing I've done is recorded a lot. I've had a lot of recording credits on films. And yeah, to answer your question simply, I just followed the great composers that are already doing it and tag along. And it's really convenient for them as well, because I can we can do all these mock-ups and I can play all these instruments, which just makes the whole thing so much bigger and nicer. So it's a good work team. So yeah, that's how I've been doing a lot of that, and I still do it in LA. It's been one of the great things about being in these cities, to get a lot of that type of work. And if you're a musician, you're listening to this, you definitely want to go into some sort of media music. You don't have to do that full time, but it's just a great way to sort of like work on your financial future too. If you think about royalties, all of that, it's even if it doesn't pay much at the beginning, they're all little investments and credits and stuff like that. But yeah, right now my main projects are that. I mean, I keep doing my day-to-day work. I'm working on my solo album. I've been working with a music library called Audio Network from London that they've been amazing. I actually released an album last year, a Latin jazz music library that basically licenses music for different purposes. So those are kind of a little bit of everything. But the ongoing day-to-day, I invest a lot of time on Tone Alley Academy and on my educational resources. That does take a lot of time to put together. And I'm a content creator. I mean, creating content every day that I know will help people, but I also know it will help me, because I want to hopefully become a well-known musician and be able to travel everywhere in the world and teach my knowledge and share my knowledge. So right now I'm focusing a lot on this, and then working with companies like you guys, like amazing, where that we can help each other. Like I'm focusing a lot on that, because with this post-COVID atmosphere, I feel like the world opening up in a way that I want to now travel. I've been just locked up in my screen for 2 years. LA was one of the worst places, by the way. Things closed down in California, was insane. So right now I definitely want to travel, go out, share my knowledge, share my music.
That's great. One last question before ending, because I have many, but I know that you're a busy man, so I don't want to keep you more here. But what would you like to be remembered? How would you like to be remembered as Lorenzo people? How would you like people to remember Lorenzo Ferrero?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, like a very nice guy that you can always approach. I know with all of this social media, Instagram, it can become, a lot of things can become very confusing and very tedious. But I just wanted to let everybody know, whoever's listening to this, if you ever have any sort of any questions or anything, just reach out. Even if I take a little bit in answering, I'm a very reachable guy. I love to help out, and of course I want to be remembered as a great musician, but as a great person too. You can always ask, you can always reach out. I want to help as many people as possible, and of course share my music and knowledge with the world.
Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna play one of the last tunes that's called Camará, right? This is one of the songs that has your last album, Retratos del Norte y Sur. Am I right?
Yes, that was the album I did for Audio Network, the music library in London. It was a whole Latin jazz big band theme. Very small tracks as well, very short tracks, which was really nice to do. I had so much fun with that project, and I'm playing in there too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, Lorenzo, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you for a while, and I hope our listeners also have enjoyed this time. So have a nice day.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I've had a blast, and we can do it again anytime. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.